This morning's discussion is going to focus on the burning. So where would our group like to start?
I don't know where we want to go with this, but I thought the Oski scene was interesting. Yeah. I kind of wish our Oski were more so.
I'm so sure that caught your attention. I don't know. Do our actors have that much fun?
I don't think so.
He pulled out the cigarette and started smoking.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we do know that Kramer actually has tobacco use disorder, right? Albeit different episode, but he does have tobacco use disorder, and in Larry David's own way, it does result in clinically significant impairment or distress. He burns down his friend's fiance's cabin due to a lit cigar. So it's a little bit of a sensational way to focus on functional impairment, but there it is, right? And again, in comedic fashion. So this character does have tobacco use disorder. Now, for tobacco use disorder, I don't think, although I could be wrong, let me rephrase this. I think it's unlikely that tobacco use disorder will be a single best answer on a psych shelf. I think that given that the tobacco-related disorder, specifically tobacco withdrawal, is so commonplace. So for those following on Instagram, I think we're going to have to just stop the feed for... give me 1 second, go. Yeah, this is not going to work over Zoom. I do apologize. So hopefully the interns following along at Rutgers A&S will be able to jump onto Instagram. So Zoom is just not cooperating this morning. It's so commonplace that unfortunately it's not going to be a gimme on your shelf exam. Now, having said that, if somebody does present with new onset irritability, headache, maybe even GI distress upon abruptly discontinuing a drug, I want you to think cannabis withdrawal. So even though I don't think tobacco withdrawal is going to show up, and if it does, wonderful, cannabis withdrawal looks very, very similar too. So I want you to keep that in mind. And if you see something that looks like tobacco withdrawal, I want you to think cannabis withdrawal is a single best answer, where GI symptoms, I think, are more prevalent and perhaps even more severe when compared to tobacco withdrawal. So just a quick test-taking pearl related to Kramer and Kramer's character in The Burning. What else did you see at this Oski?
He got typecast for gonorrhea, and he was so upset that he gave this great performance, and they wanted him to give it again. And so instead of talking about it, he just comes in with jaundice instead.
Yeah. He jumps to hepatitis, which I guess is the gold standard when it comes to Oski. I'm in my own little lane when it comes to Oski and writing up the Oski script that hepatitis doesn't even occur to me. But that said, certainly, this is a metaphor for someone who doesn't feel comfortable in their own skin, pardon the pun, and adopts this other persona. And we can go in any direction with that, but and it probably is a little bit more than what this morning's discussion can kind of herd. But there's one other thing that happens, though, as a result of that. I completely agree with you. He does get typecast, and he does take it upon himself to change who he is, okay, keeping with the metaphors and behavioral medicine. But then as a result, what's Mickey's reaction?
He gets some.
Yeah. Anger.
Yeah. And when Mickey does that, what does a medical student say?
PCP intoxication.
Yeah, PCP intoxication. Now, I know that we were kind of having a discussion before we went live on Coherence, a film we're going to discuss and analyze at noon, which focuses primarily on ketamine. But the Seinfeld episode, same day, different discussion, is also focused on not only hallucinogen, but the specific subclass of hallucinogen, dissociative, right? So that's PCP. Now, we kind of touched on this last week, but in review, PCP, any hallucinogen, does not have an identified withdrawal state. Right? So you're not going to see hallucinogen withdrawal. You're not going to see PCP withdrawal as part of a psych shelf. However, intoxication is fair game. And you saw the behavioral manifestations of acute PCP intoxication demonstrated in the burning. All right, so aggression, assaultiveness, irritability, all are the behavioral outcomes of acute PCP intoxication. Now, in addition, there are physiologic signs that you have to focus on as well. They include aspects of seizure, nystagmus, and related signs and symptoms. Now, I want to bridge the gap for everyone because there is a scene that if you watch, and you don't do it now, please, but even sometime today, maybe just before our noon lecture, if you actually search the Terminator police station, it is a brief scene that absolutely shows you acute PCP intoxication / behavioral, very similar to the Oski and Seinfeld. Right after, similar to Seinfeld, a character actually mentions PCP. So it's all there. Yeah. And the reason why I would defer you and ask that you watch the police station scene of this movie prior to your shelf is because if you look at the DSM criteria and simply rearrange them, they do spell out the word Terminator. All right, so it's nice to know that this particular movie, 1984, serves not only as the behavioral depiction of acute PCP intoxication, that drug specifically mentioned in the script of the Terminator, but also, albeit through an acronym, the physiologic manifestations of acute PCP intoxication as well. Right? Especially for test-taking purposes, maybe a little less on the clinical side, but anything that goes for one dissociative holds for the other. So let's also adopt these very same criteria for ketamine intoxication as well. Any questions about PCP or dissociatives? So last week we talked about the Matrix and its relation to Alice in Wonderland and focused on LSD. Now that's a psychedelic. Now we're kind of transitioning. We're pivoting to a different subclass of hallucinogen. Now we're focused on the dissociatives. By the way, what's the third and final subclass of hallucinogens? The deliriants. Right, so there's 3 subclasses, deliriants. I'm still looking for a film for that, but we'll get there in time. What else did you see in the burning?
Oh, we could talk about like Elaine and Putty, I guess, and basically she gets super shocked that he's listening to Christian rock music. They have a conversation, and he says that she's going to hell, basically, and she's very upset that he's not more upset that she's potentially going to hell. Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm. A couple of comments here on Elaine, the character, and I think one, Elaine has a lot of boyfriends in the 9 seasons of Seinfeld, and Putty is the most stable. Not stable as a character per se, although he might be, but yeah. That said, with someone she knows so intimately, for her to be surprised that this is who he is, this is actually part of his person, his spiritual self, is itself a statement on how superficial this character is and how her intimate relationships are not intimate.
And she kind of says that she was like, I'd rather he be lazy and stupid. Like, I understand that. But like depth and like religion, she was like,
And she's like, I picked him because he was like so
Right.
boring,
Yeah.
and now he has this like other aspect to him.
Yep. Yeah. Again, it's definitely true. Definitely true. Now, it's interesting too, and I made this comment before about Elaine. We know very little about her past. I think of the 4 characters, we know the least about her. Even Kramer, because of their Larry David's idea of introducing what his real first name is, we get to meet Babs. We get to meet his mom. And we get to meet dialogue, or we hear dialogue then surrounding his mom and surrounding his family. And that's a little bit more than we're afforded when it comes to Elaine and Elaine's past history. Nonetheless, her father does appear in a couple of episodes, and he's a very stern, very emotionally distant character, which is consistent with what we're discussing in terms of the adult Elaine Bennis and how that childhood must have been. Last night, I actually happened to watch The Airport, which is an episode that introduces Elaine returning from St. Louis and having seen her sister. And I think it's the only episode in that another family member is even mentioned. And her mom is never mentioned. And I want you to parallel this to a 60 or maybe perhaps even a 90-minute psychiatric evaluation. I mean, as a clinician, this is a pertinent negative. I mean, if somebody talks to you about themselves for 90 minutes, and I know a lot of it's structured and a lot of it is closed-ended questions provided by the clinician, but a lot of it should be open-ended too, especially in the beginning, that initial psych eval, when you're trying to gain rapport with an individual. And to have that open-endedness and have somebody avoid even bringing up their mom is a pertinent negative. And it is also a pertinent negative in Seinfeld, the series as well. Right? So it goes a lot in explaining Elaine's identified or observed behavior in The Burning.
I feel like there's I don't know what it's called, but there's a concept, I feel like I read about this a long time ago, where you're not able to, you kind of have categories of information, or like kind of circles of information, you're not able to incorporate new information. Like, it's uncomfortable for you to change that theme that you're aware of. I don't remember exactly what that's called, but I remember learning about it in undergrad.
It's not alexithymia.
I don't know.
Isn't that like a lack of emotion?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It sounds a little bit like compartmentalizing, like just from a basic level.
Yeah.
Intellectualization?
Maybe.
It seems like the lack of connectivity is somehow intertwined with emotion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you see that in trauma, where like people will just not bring up like historical context, like family and stuff, because they don't want to integrate their new life with a traumatic past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the defense is avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
However, if somebody brings up the factual nature of it and then leaves the emotional connection in the subconscious, that's called isolation of affect.
Okay.
So there's two defense mechanisms that probably are contributing to what you're identifying, even though I'm not sure of the actual medical term of what you're identifying.
I feel like Elaine does the opposite of isolation of affect. I feel like she has all the emotion and none of the context. Like, she doesn't give you any of the information, but she's still feeling all the things she was feeling probably as a child.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, she's in there. I would love to. I mean, here's Larry David's next $1 million idea. I mean, let's publish Elaine's therapy notes. I mean, we know that Dr. Reston sees her for a while. Now she's in a relationship with him, so that's its own issue. But if Larry David were to publish Elaine's notes, and of course there's some comedy there, because even on the medical side, her medical chart gets her in trouble, right? She's a quote-unquote problem patient because of the way she acts in a couple of episodes. But boy, if we can actually see her medical record published on Netflix, that would be an incredible series. Nonetheless.
Difficulty assimilating new information?
I'm trying,
I
difficulty.
mean, you see that with like brain trauma or like developmental difficulties.
It's interrograde is again the adjective, but
Right.
I'll have to think of that. So if somebody knows on in our social media realm, I could post it for us. All right, we are quarter past the hour now. What other characters? What other scenes would you like to further discuss here?
I thought we saw like an interesting side of George, where he had to be the responsible one for once, and it was like actually just really not comfortable for him, and he really disliked it. But it's funny because his boss is basically just like him, and that's what bothers him.
Yeah, so give me the scene in which you found him acting responsible or putting himself in that position.
It was like towards the end, so when the boss is like, I want to work just with you, like, because like I feel like you've been great, and I really enjoy working with you, because he'd been exiting the conversations early, and now he's stuck with all this work. And the last scene, like as the credits are rolling, he like yells at his boss, and he's like, I'm just like, don't you care? This is like your company. And the boss exits like on a high note, supposedly, and just bails, and he's stuck doing everything.
Yeah. Yeah, George, I think that his early childhood relationships not only influence his adult intimate relationships, but his job relationships or vocational relationships and ultimately his job performance as well. He's one who jumps from job to job and actually even takes pride in when he doesn't work, right? It's the summer of George. So yeah, for him to be in this very situation is probably not only new, but somewhat uncomfortable for him, where he's responsible. And I think it goes towards the responsibility he feels in being an adult in general. So this, I think, is captured in the Ericksonian's theory, or Erickson's theory. So he's certainly middle-aged, right? And you would think that he would have evolved through young adult, right, which focuses primarily on intimacy. He's definitely stagnated there, right? So he's probably more isolated, right? Intimacy versus isolation, and then even generativity versus stagnation. He's stagnated too, right? So and we see this come out not only in his job performance and his relationships at work, but professional relationships, that is, but also his intimate relationships.
I thought it was interesting and like a good picture of like social anxiety when he makes the joke, but then he keeps going and it's like no longer funny. And he carries that with him like for the rest of the day, and he like tells Jerry that it's such like a picture of social anxiety in a lot of ways. And he's like very anxious, and so instead he decides to avoid, right, kind of like almost an OCD response of avoidance or anxiety response of avoidance, and that's what gets him into this pickle because now they only think of him as like this funny guy.
Yeah, and what also demonstrates is something you brought up last week, in that this character has a significant external locus of control. The people laughing and then reinforcing is what makes him who he is, at least in his mind, right? If they laugh, I am good. If they don't laugh because I carried it too far, I am bad. And his own self-worth is really influenced by what others perceive him as. That's that external locus of control. Again, there are some people on the opposite end of the spectrum, and this is interesting because Jerry happens to be a comedian. If they don't laugh at your joke, you're still the same person, right? It is somewhat ironic that Jerry, the comedian, actually understands that more than George, the person who is not on stage and whose not vocation is, or his income is not tied to that very reaction. Almost 20 minutes after the hour. Any final scene you want to break down here?
Jerry's girlfriend in the tractor story. The gonorrhea story, but that's like not what she calls it. The tractor story.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts?
I just feel bad for her.
Yeah.
That like she got gonorrhea from her boyfriend, who then told her that that was because of the tractor.
And it shows the importance of good sex ed.
Yeah, exactly.
Other thoughts here? So let's say that this character presents to you with a chief complaint of depressed mood. Now, I don't think she's depressed in the episode, but now as a hypothetical, she presents, and the reason that she makes an appointment with you is, I have a depressed mood.
Sure you do. Yeah. It sounds like you've been taking advantage of a lot of your relationships, so I'm sure you do.
Probably been cheated on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that even even when you go beyond the actual diagnostic criteria and reaching the diagnosis, and let's say in this case she has no suicidal thoughts and she does not feel hopeless. So as a clinician, you're not as concerned for her safety. So you're able to analytically look at this and think, all right, what's going on here? What other aspects of her life do you think you'll focus on, if not in the initial psychiatric evaluation, maybe in psychotherapy? And I think we alluded to this. What is it?
Yeah, relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, again, the primordial relationship is going to be very, very important, and that's with her parents in general, perhaps her father in particular. What was that like growing up? Because whatever it was patterned something, and she looks like someone who is consistently taken advantage of. And or I should say this, if she does provide information that several, not just one, but several boyfriends treat her the way her current boyfriend did, telling her about the tractor, would you be surprised?
No.
And it's just no, right? And to the extent that this might be contributing to the very reason why she presented to you, that's certainly something you're going to wind up having to focus on clinically.
I think also, like, you could say that it's reasonable for someone of her age to understand how one would get gonorrhea. It could be an education lapse for sure, but it is reasonable to assume that people know it's like STIs. So I feel like there could be like some denial in play too, that she's using that type of explanation of the tractor as a way to like rationalize her inability to like cope or deal with
His
like,
infidelity.
any type of trauma, yeah, or
I also think she's like pretty dependent on her relationship. Like even when she does the "it's me," it's like an expectation that her boyfriends know who she is, like support her, call her, recognize her voice, and it's like a lot early on in the relationship. She kind of jumps full in, and so I think that's probably, I would look for that as a pattern too, like this dependence and like almost being defined by who she's dating.
Yep.
I also think there was something that bothered me with that last one, especially, was she didn't refer to him as her ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, she
It
did.
was, oh, my boyfriend told me this.
I noticed that too.
And so, is it like, did she not? I mean, she could be having multiple boyfriends. That's fine. But
Yeah, and then in the call when
When
you know,
Jerry
Jerry was
called,
pretending,
I
he was like, "It's
yeah.
me," and she assumed that it was
Someone
Rafi, and that person obviously knew about the tractor story. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah, that may not have been just a glitch in the script.
Mhm.
Right. This again might provide further information on who she is as a person.
yeah, totally. It sounds like the script is actually very intentional.
Yeah.
Even like closing out, like you were saying, with the I don't know what his name is, the leader of the Georgia's team, like the,
Oh, Kruger?
yeah, Kruger going out on a high note. Like that's not a coincidence, obviously. Like I think they're intentionally like looping things back in the
Mhm.
script, so I feel like it's very plausible.
Okay. Final thoughts? All right, we'll end it here. For those that are part of the internship following us on Instagram, let's try to log back on Zoom now for morning rounds, and we'll check in there. Thank you.